Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking you through all the books that I hope to read in the month of July. So I feel like July is probably more of a pile of possibilities than an actual TBR. Same as June, it's a bit more of a maybe I'll read these, maybe I won't, we'll see how we go. Maybe it will happen, maybe it won't. That sort of vibe. Just go with the flow, see what happens. I feel as though my expectations of how many books I can read in a month definitely differs from how many I can actually read. That in my head I'm like, I'm going to be able to read 10 books in a month, and that very rarely happens. Occasionally it happens, but I'm more likely to read like 5-6 books, and I keep having this expectation that I can read 10 and then it doesn't happen. But we'll see how we get on. We'll see how we get on. I'm sure we're all like this as bookworms. We all think that we are able to read all of the things, and then we can't actually manage that. A few people can, but I can't. So July, things that I have on, it is my birthday at the beginning of the month. I have a couple of days off for that. I don't have loads of plans. Have that, and then I am going back to my parents for the weekends following it. So like one weekend with my dad, one weekend with my mum. So my weekends will be disrupted a little bit until the second half of the month, where currently I don't have plans for them, but I feel like my weekends are all pretty much booked for the first 3 weekends of July. But in terms of what I'm doing in the week, I don't feel like there's that many plans. I don't have any travelling plans in July apart from going to my parents, so actually maybe more of a calmer month potentially, with a little highlight at the beginning. So diving into the books, I still have these 2 sequels that have been on a few TBRs now, so I still have not read Chain of Thorns or The Bone Shard War. It will happen. I do still have maybe not quite a week left in June, but I do still have a few days left in June because I'm filming this on the 25th of the month. So these 2 are still kicking around, still haven't been read yet. The mood will eventually strike for them. They're definitely going to happen. It's just figuring out when. But these 2 are still here. So both of them conclusions to series. So I really should get to them. I really should. To Chain of Thorns, the third and final book to the Last Hour series by Cassandra Clare, and then The Bone Shard War, the third and final book to the Drowning Empire series by Andrea Stewart. So hopefully these will get read. I do have a finale to add to this. So I have now, I'm in the process of finishing up Before They Are Hanged, so that will mean that I can get to the Last Argument of Kings, the third and final book in the First Law, so the first series within the First Law universe. Really enjoying that second book. That will definitely be finished before the end of June, as I have 100 or so pages left, so hopefully maybe even finished by the end of today, and then I can dive into this at some point in July. It is a bit of a chunkier one. How long are we looking? 700 pages. So it is a bit of a long one, but I am really enjoying this. I've generally heard that this is typically people's favourite book in the series. High hopes for this one. Another sequel is Blood Sanctuary Part 1, maybe even Part 2 potentially, if I can get to it. I have started this. I am 50 or so pages in. 62 pages in, but then I wasn't really in the mood for it, so I started reading this on holiday, and it wasn't doing anything necessarily wrong. It was a little bit of a slow start, but it wasn't doing anything wrong. But I was like, I don't think I'm in the mood for this one, and I switched to Before They Are Hanged. So obviously very, very different vibes, like a fantasy romance to a grimdark fantasy. You can see the mood wasn't quite there. So I do want to get back to this, finish it off. It isn't too long actually, this one. It's only, I say that, it's 430 pages. But for me, that's not too long when I compare it to the other books on this TBR. That everything I'm looking at is 600 pages, and this one's actually in the 400s. So it looks smaller in perspective. So I would like to get to this as part of Becca from Becca and the Books, her Patreon book club. This was the book for the month of June. So I would like to be able to get back on track and get back in line with that. So in theory, this Part 1 is June and Part 2 is July. So I would like to keep up to date with that as I'm actually catching up with them in this series, because I think the live show for this is in the middle of July, so I might actually be able to catch up in time for this one. I then have a couple of rereads that I would like to be able to do in July. So me and Stephanie from Stephanie's Bookverse have said that we want to read the Forgetting Moon. For me, this is a reread. She actually has this on her June TBR. Maybe I will start this week. I do plan to listen to the audiobook for this because I have read it before, so maybe like dip in and out between physically reading and the audiobook. And I remember I did sort of immersion read of this last time, and the audiobook narrator is very, very good. He is the same guy that did the Red Rising audiobooks. I can't remember his name. I very thoroughly enjoyed his narration, and I am feeling in a more like epic grim mood, I guess, as can be judged by finally reading the first law. Would like to ideally get to this, maybe start this in June, finish it in July would be the plan. We'll see what I feel like after I finish before they're hanged. I have a little, see if I can finish something else this month or not. And then I would like to start my reread of The Mask of Mirrors. Again, I'm trying to decide if I want to do this physically or with the audiobook, because this is a reread, so potentially I could go down either route. I don't know if you've listened to the audiobook of this. Have you enjoyed it? Is it good? Or should I stick to reading this physically? So the third and final book in this series comes out in August. So ideally I would like to reread this one and The Liars, Not the Second Book, but ahead of that release. Don't know if that will quite happen, but that is my intention, so that I can go in with a fresh head. There's lots of politics in this series, and lots of different machinations that go on. Their magic system is quite intricate as well, so I feel like I will get even more out of this series on reread because of how intricate it is, and it will give me the best position. I would go into the third book in the best position to really thoroughly enjoy it, having everything and all the details fresh in my head. And then I just picked a few other like random ones off the shelf. Could be these, could be something else that ends up getting read. So I did want to read Fireborn in June. It hasn't happened, so I figure I would put this on this list again. I do still really want to read this one. I've just been prioritizing working on my series a little bit this month. This one hasn't happened because I've actually been continuing things, not quite finishing things, but I've definitely been continuing in things. This one hasn't happened, but I am very, very interested in reading it. Here it is again. I did fall down a little bit of a Carissa Broadbent rabbit hole in June. So I did, I guess, sequels and Carissa Broadbent. I bought and read 3 of her books, and I read all 3. And I haven't bought any others as yet, but potentially that rabbit hole will keep growing, and I might end up like buying more of them. So potentially I could read more of that, because more of her books, because I really thoroughly enjoyed my time reading them, and I'll talk about them in my June wrap up. So potentially I might like buy more of her books and read more of them because I was having so much fun there. But otherwise, a couple of other ones that are just calling to me a little bit. I don't know if these will quite happen. They're just sort of the siren calls are starting. So I do have an arc of A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. This comes out in September, so I have a little bit of time, and this is like a sort of fairy tale-esque dark academia is what I get from the synopsis. I did speak about it in my anticipated releases for July, August and September. If it doesn't happen, then I could read it in August and still be ahead of release, but definitely interested in this one. And I have read from Ava Reid before and enjoyed her writing style. And then otherwise I have One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake, which is the latest one that's her latest publication, or the latest self-published book by her that has been published by a traditional publisher. I'm not too sure. I think this is like War in Families. Part of me gets Romeo and Juliet vibes from this, but with a witchy twist. So I recently read Alone with You in the Ether, really enjoyed it, and part of me feels like I want to just keep up to date with Olivia Blake's books. So she has this one. I haven't got up to date yet with the Atlas series. I think that will be towards the end of the year that I would start my reread of that, and then read the second book, and then the third book comes out in January. But maybe I can keep up to date with her standalone releases. So there's just some ideas. It's a possibility pile for right now. I really do want to be working through my TBR. I would like to work on getting my TBR down a little bit, and that's probably easiest if I am working on some standalones, because then I'm not worried about having to buy more sequels. That is the issue with the series, is that I have so many first books in series on my TBR, and then I have to go out and buy like the second and third book, and then I don't work on my physical TBR. The sort of swings and roundabouts with the ever growing, ever changing TBR. I feel like I've done a whistle-stop tour of those books I've raced through them this month. But those are some ideas. Obviously, I also do want to get to the Poison Song, the third book in the Ninth Reign, but I don't own that yet, so I was sort of like holding off until I owned it before putting it onto a TBR. Maybe that'll be in August. Maybe that'll be August. I have realised that I have so many series where I've read the first 2 books and I just have the final book to read, whether that's the final book is published and I haven't read it, or the final book is still waiting to be released. But I have so many series where I just need to read the third and final book, and it is a little bit ridiculous, and I really want to work on that and actually read these final books. So there we go, those are some of my ideas for July. It does feel a little bit up in the air right now. I may stick with this, I may go a little bit rogue, but there's some ideas. I feel like I'm forgetting something, or like there's something that I want to read that I haven't spoken about. It's obviously not coming to me right now. I guess maybe we'll see in my July wrap up what I actually end up reading. So let me know what you plan to read in the month of July, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!